Bismillah, testing, Bismillah.
You want to hold the mic? Or? Okay. Uh-oh. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight for our Juneteenth celebration with Ubaydullah Evans. To we are honored to have you again, time and time again. Inshallah, this will be a very casual conversation around Juneteenth celebration and liberation. What does that look like for us as Muslim American community, as Black
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Of course, it's a great honor and a great privilege to be back in Redmond, to be back in the greater Seattle area. And I say that not as an empty pleasantry. You know, I know often speakers get on the microphone and they say it's an honor to be here, it's a privilege to be here, and they say that no matter where they are. And maybe they genuinely feel that it's an honor and a privilege to be wherever they are. But I'm especially fond of this community. I've had very good experiences here, from giving the khutbah for Salat al-Eid to giving the khutbah for Jum'ah on a number of occasions, to participating in community programs like the program that we're holding this evening. I have friends in this community, you know, Brother Sam, Sister Duha, Sister Adasha, Brother Haider. So, you know, this will not be formal at all. Inshallah, you know, anybody who wants to add anything to the conversation or ask a question at any point should feel no reservation about raising their hand, or if I don't see you, just, you know, blurting out, literally, because I really hope that this conversation can serve as a source of reconciliation of the hearts. You know, all of us are engaged in the very difficult work of trying to be in community with each other. And that is never without challenges. People with different backgrounds, different histories, different goals, different objectives, different fears, different obsessions, trying to share one space. As a community, we're always presented with challenges when we attempt that, but it's blessed, blessed work. So this evening, I'm prepared for a no-holds-barred. That was an analogy from my man Moses, because I know he likes, you know, MMA. No holds are barred tonight conversation with the community, because I really respect Sister Duha's work and just how long-standing of a member she's been in this community. I thought it would be wise for her to kind of direct the conversation. So if you don't like anything that's said, it's her fault. Bismillah.
I think it'd be appropriate to start with the history of Juneteenth, where that came about.
Bismillah. Most of us, even if we have just a cursory or very broad, impressionistic understanding of American history, knows that for a significant amount of time in the country's history, African Americans were an enslaved population, especially in the southern United States. During the American Civil War, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, but the Emancipation Proclamation did not reach all of the enslaved Americans. at the time that he issued it. It wasn't until 2 years later that the 13th Amendment actually freed the slaves, and then another 6 months after that, the last enslaved Americans were set free in Galveston, Texas on June 19th. And Juneteenth is a commemoration of the official end of the enslavement of those that were in bondage. So Juneteenth is kind of like, for me, when you talk about America's freedom, that freedom was not legally recognized for all Americans until Juneteenth. And that's kind of the history. One of the things, while I'm talking about it, that I think is interesting about that is that even though the vast majority of, formerly enslaved African Americans had already achieved their freedom at that time, they didn't consider slavery as having come to an end until all of them had received their freedom. So Juneteenth is a commemoration of all of them finally achieving liberation. Alhamdulillah.
Know that a third of the were as captured, or of almost from the West. How does the American of that connection? How do you that connection fulfilled, I guess, or a better understanding of the proximity that even though you might not come from lineage or background, you still have that to that.
Bismillah. The Quran says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الْإِخْوَةِ. The believers are but one brotherhood, and by extension, one sisterhood. We're called upon to form the basis of a community that transcends ethnic identity, transcends geographic location, transcends racial identity. And in America, that notion is very foreign. Race is really the foundation upon which communities are formed in the United States of America. Like in America, for one to say that I have an identity that transcends race is almost blasphemous. It's like, what do you mean? It's almost, in fact, I think a better term is it's almost unbelievable. And American Christianity, and I don't say this like as an attack or a broadside against Christianity, but just a historical fact, American Christianity has never been able to bridge the racial gap in the United States of America. One social commentator said that the most segregated 2 hours of American public life are still Sunday from 9 to 11. Because African Americans tend to go to African American churches and white Americans tend to go to white American churches. So for us, the idea that our community is a multi-ethnic community, this is like the essence and core of the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ with regard to ethnicity. But in America, that's a very strange idea. However, if we take that prophetic idea seriously, that means that all of us can say as Muslims, my people have been in America since its inception. I am no Johnny-come-lately to America. Maybe me as a Syrian. Maybe me as a Syrian. My family's history in America begins in the 1920s or 1930s or 1960s. Me as a South Asian or me as a Southeast Asian. But if I say me as a Muslim, I have been in America since its inception. My people have participated in every war in the United States of America. My people have made contributions to the founding documents of this country. And when you look at the tradition of civil rights, which to my mind is the thing that really makes America special, my people have been central in crafting the language and expressing those civil rights in very profound and attractive ways. I think Muslims can say that if they really invest in that history, if they really honor that history. But as Sister Doha and I were talking about earlier, a cheap investment in that history is different than a deep investment in that history. You see, to say the slogans and to put the signs in the yard and to wave the flags and to pander, this is a cheap investment in that history. But a deep investment in that history means really identifying places that I am connected with that legacy, with those people, and the descendants of those people in the present day, and figuring out how we can work together. I think one of the, when we talk about like strengthening that bond and deepening those ties, this will sound a little anticlimactic, but a lot of what we need to do is just be together, worshiping together, eating together, fellowshipping, educating our children together, living together. I think sometimes some of our brethren don't realize that it's slightly offensive to suggest that the only way we can engage African American communities is on a basis of philanthropy, that we're giving and they're taking, or on a basis of charity. How can we, and I think they mean very well, how can we give something? Well, wait a minute, before we, that might be something necessary, but can we just worship together? Can we just actually sit and eat together, get to know one another, right? Do you have, Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhan-nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, wa ja'alnakum shu'uba wa qaba'ila lita'arafu. Inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum, inna Allaha alimun khabir. O humanity, we created you from one male and one female, and we spread you into nations and tribes, lita'arafu, to come to know one another. Sometimes the thing that hurts me most is that we don't have that curiosity about each other. You don't think there's anything to learn from me. You don't think there's anything to be gained through a relationship with me. Sometimes, and I'm sure people mean well, how can we just give you something? Like, wait a second, that might not even be the outcome of our coming together for you to give me anything. Maybe the outcome will be for you to gain something from me, and I'll be in a position to give you something. But we won't know that if we aren't together. And the way that we come together has to be very, very intentional, because everything in the United States, pits people against each other on the basis of mostly class and professional, affiliation or lack thereof. So we live among the people that we work with, and we seek our recreational activity among the people that we live with. And our worship ends up being almost a part of that. But what about an intentional commitment to being in those places that we seldomly visit, and just being open, entering those spaces with a spirit of openness. And I think out of that spirit of openness, some of those bonds can develop organically, and Allah knows best.
So we talked about the 13th Amendment and that kind of the Emancipation Proclamation. There is a clause in there where it says, and I'm paraphrasing. Oh, we have questions. Perfect. Yes, go ahead. So it's correct me if I'm wrong. It's about a third of those who came over.
Yeah, I heard 30%. Yeah, 30%. Well, a good book, and I'm sure many people have read the book already, is Servants of Allah by Sylviane Diouf. A very thorough historical survey that talks about early Muslim communities in bondage, in the Americas. And the artifacts are there, handwritten portions of Quran, prayer beads, first-hand accounts of second and third generation enslaved persons saying that my grandmother used to face the east, 5 times daily, and she would pray. Because, of course, one of the things we aren't saying is that they weren't able to sustain that religious commitment. But many of those enslaved persons began in this land, as Muslims, practicing Muslims too. Yes. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Mm. Mm. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah, the short answer is that I don't know. I think one of the most important things to remember about black communities is that they're not monolithic. They're not, there is no kind of one-size-fits-all answer for these questions. You have personal differences, differences based on different regional cultures, differences based on taste, proclivities, inclinations. So I think in order to, the verse in the Quran that's coming to my mind is "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wa maw'idatil hasana." Call to the way of your Lord with wisdom and beautiful exhortation. Of course, this is about da'wah, but anytime you want to invite someone to partake of something, it's important to have an intimate knowledge of how to invite them. And in order to kind of have that kind of knowledge base, you have to observe them very closely. One time I was on YouTube. I know you guys are, people who don't look at YouTube, but, yeah, right. And somehow, in my search query, I ended up with a video by a Christian evangelist named Dr. Jerry Root. And he teaches at Wheaton College, which is outside of Chicago. But he was giving a lecture. I will never forget this. I forget where I was when I heard it. Called Calling to God on the Basis of Felt Need. He said that, and this what he said was so Islamic, right? But he was, a Christian evangelist. He said that human beings have needs. All of us know that. Human beings have needs. He said, if you want to call them to something, you have to identify that need first, and then show how what you're calling them to addresses that need. Right? So I would say, these women that you're trying to connect with, maybe just approaching them less prescriptively and more openly, asking. I'm a self-defense teacher. I believe very strongly in female empowerment. Is this something that would, and this is kind of what I offer, is this something that would interest you? And maybe they will tell you, no. And you say, oh, okay. Oh, okay, mashallah. If they say, yeah, it would interest me, but maybe not in the way that you're presenting it, maybe, okay, well, how might I present this, right, to make it more attractive to, a woman of your station, a woman of your level of accomplishment, a woman of your level of capacity? How might I present what I'm doing in a way that would be more attractive to you? Just asking a straight up question. You know what I'm saying? And you might be surprised at some of the responses that you might receive. You might be surprised. I mean, I'm thinking of my wife, Allah yarhamuha. She's still alive, but I just want Allah to show her, have mercy on her. Hafidhahullah. Yeah. She's still alive, alhamdulillah. I think something that I've heard her talk about, because she works at the University of Chicago Medical School, is the struggle of being assertive, but averting the trope of the angry black woman. She feels very, like if she asserts herself in a certain way, there's this pre-recorded message that she feels that the team there is ready to associate her with. So learning to, voice her perspective assertively, while still managing this idea that I don't want to be seen as angry, I don't want to be seen as, irrationally emotional, etc. Like dealing with an issue like that head on, I could see a lot of black women being attracted to that kind of training. Bismillah.
So, right, and this is not just from a perspective of self-defense and stuff, right? If you have a friend who's black and kind of approaches you and says, okay, I'm facing these challenges at work, and the real issue that I felt dumbstruck as he came to me, he said, I have these challenges because I'm black, these things happen at work, and I find it a lot easy when it comes to other issues because I face harassment and all of that. The helping women through that is slightly different. And when she came and told me, oh, it's because I was black, and they told me that I wouldn't get the promotion, et cetera, it's a big story. And I just felt completely silent. I just couldn't say anything to her. I was like, oh, just because you're black, that's my challenge. I've never found myself in that position ever when someone asked me that my boss refused to give me a promotion because I'm black. And at that point, it's like, what do I say? How do I help? And she's coming to me because she knows I'm a coach and that's what I do. And then there's other challenges. Oh, I'm facing this issue. So that's kind of where I was trying to ask. And I don't know if you have something to say from an Islamic perspective or your opinion.
That kind of issue, I find it's interesting. I have to know the person very well, and I'm usually pretty aware of kind of the disposition of the person asking me a question. But if I think it's useful, I will normally talk about our Islamic teaching around rizq. That part of what belief in an omnipotent God is supposed to unlock for a person is that no one can stop me from anything God has decreed for me. And I believe that. It's not to negate statistical data. It's not to negate the real experiences of people with racism. But it's just to affirm for them that if God has written something for you, no one will prevent you from getting it. Right? The Prophet ﷺ in the authentic hadith, he's with Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, and he says, do you want me to tell you something that if I told it would free, if I told you this, it would free you? Ibn Abbas said, yes, tell me. He said, if all of the jinn and all of the human beings work together in concert to harm you, with something that God had not decreed, they would not be able to harm you in the least. And if all of them work together in concert to benefit you with something that God had not decreed for you, they would not be able to benefit you in the least. And I would affirm that person that you are worthy of the promotion. And whether it's here or somewhere else, you will get everything that you deserve, right? You will get everything that you deserve. I promise you, right? So if you are experiencing the ignorance and the unscrupulousness of superiors that would hold you back from professional advancement because of your race, then maybe that just means this is not the place for you. This is a place that is stifling your growth. But everything that's yours will reach you. And sometimes I share with non-Muslims, we actually have an Islamic teaching that when a child is in the womb of its mother, its rizq is determined. Right? It's already, this is already determined. This is already decreed. Right now, you're dealing with the reality of what you've experienced, and you're also dealing with the anxiety that you're being deprived of something. Let's go to HR. Let's, talk to, management about what you've experienced because it's wrong and they have to be held accountable. But in terms of the anxiety you feel that something's being taken from you, wallahi, I swear to God, nothing can be taken from you. And I noticed that this provides some alleviation for them, really. That you're not, and I think that these are the perspectives that we can add to the discourse as a spiritual community, that someone that doesn't have that register, someone that really just deals with, the kind of racism as, a worldly phenomenon, right? But doesn't recognize that everything that happens is happening under the decree of a God, right? And sometimes these are just, minor setbacks for major comebacks. Minor setbacks for major comebacks. And I find that, this language can open some psychological space. It's not. And the last thing I'll say, I'll come to you one second, sister. And the last thing that I make sure to add is, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna fil jasadi mudgha." Truly in the body there's a lump of flesh. In salahat al jasadu kullu. If that lump of flesh is pure, the entire body is pure. Wa in fasadat al jasadu kullu. But if that lump of flesh is corrupt, the entire body is corrupt. Allah hiya al-qalb. Is it Allah huwa al-qalb? Is it something other than the heart? Right? Every act of beauty that we see, every act of humanity that we see, every act of graciousness that we see comes from a human heart. And similarly, every act of barbarity, every act of inhumanity, every act of ugliness and vileness also comes from a human heart. And the people that have held you back from a promotion you deserve on the basis of you being a woman or on the basis of you being black, something is wrong with their hearts. Their hearts are sick. Something is wrong with their hearts. Their hearts are diseased. And so I don't want you to internalize any kind of inferiority that you aren't adequate or you did something wrong. Something is wrong with these people. Something is wrong with them. And, we will try our best to correct them. And if we can't correct them, we will move on and we will pray for them. And that's it. That's it. SubhanAllah. Yes, my sister.
Um, okay. So I just wanted to answer your question because I'm African American myself, So I'm a Black Muslim woman. My dad's from Texas. My mom's from St. Louis. My whole family from the South. So I just want to answer your question in my perspective. So I can say many Black women in America have stories to tell throughout history and till now. And the stories that we have is mostly traumatic because, there's Black families whose history was rich and it was stolen from them. There's Black families whose history was just nothing but trauma. And there's, like, my family, for example, started with my grandma when she became Muslim. That's our story. And there's mixed with trauma and religion and abuse. Like, just many Black women and Black men have so many stories to tell, and it's just best for people to really understand our story because the whites portray our story in history. They're the ones who write our story, but they don't allow us to. We just want, as Black women, we want people to understand, like, what we went through, what our family went through, and to understand why we want to get into this. Because I know Black women who've been through trauma and they didn't have the help. So it's good to ask Black women why you want to do it, or why do you, for Black women. I went to Rainier Beach High School, and they would ask the girls, like, why do you want to go to college? And many Black girls, I was either the first generation to go, or I don't have the money to go. Like I said, we have so many stories to tell. It just feels so good to see the position that we're in. And we just love people to ask us why. Like, that's our favorite question is why. Because no one wants to hear our story. So when you ask us why, we would love to just tell you our story. Like, no matter if it's traumatic, we got out of it, or if it's positive. And, when people ask me why, I'm like, oh, let's sit down and have some tea. Come on, let's talk about this. So, yeah, just asking.
Masha, I appreciate that, sister. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I think what the sister's saying is spot on. That verse in the Quran, li ta'arafu, it's about having a genuine curiosity about each other, and not being frustrated by difference. Actually recognizing difference as a very powerful sign of God. That people have different histories and people are motivated by different things. Right? So yeah, I think asking why and just with openness, man. With openness and with curiosity. I think this is very important.
I just wanted to touch briefly on liberation, kind of the conversation we were having earlier around this movement from enslavement and the 13th Amendment. Moving from the 13th Amendment and the Emancipation Proclamation towards the clause that's in that amendment that says that folks are free except in situations of crime and incarceration, and this kind of new wave of enslavement, and just your notion on the current patterns of incarceration and how that's affecting our.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Yeah, no, the issue of mass incarceration is something that warrants all of our attention. The United States incarcerates more people than any industrialized nation in the world. In fact, if you look at the next, 10 countries, they don't even, the number of incarcerated persons in those 10 countries doesn't encompass 60% of the number of incarcerated persons in the United States of America. And for us not to recognize this as a strange, troubling social phenomenon, I would have to question the depth of our humanity, the depth of our sensitivity. The fact that we've normalized that so many people are languishing in prison. There's something wrong with that. That should be to any person of conscience, that should be troubling. Man, why are so many people in jail? What is happening? And when you begin to look at these numbers, there's a small percentage that are in jail for like violent crimes. The largest number is actually people in jail for nonviolent offenses. So when you think about violence against, like depredations or violence against your fellow citizens, this is a horrible thing. And even that can be dealt with in a restorative way. I studied Islamic law. I studied Sharia at Azhar. And one of the things that was striking to me about Islamic law is that as a had punishment, there's no prolonged period of incarceration. That's not, you won't see that in Islamic criminal codes, that somebody did something and they go to jail for 50 years. That's just not Now, you have much in those criminal codes that maybe some of our neighbors would consider cruel and unusual punishment. People, having their limbs severed and things like that. But these are mostly exemplary punishments for the purpose of deterring crime. They actually don't, these hudud don't take place, very often. But most of our justice is restorative justice. Something happens between a member of a family and another member of a family, and those two people sit down and work it out. He hit this person, how will we deal? This was stolen from this person, okay, repay what was stolen, and then this is like, we have a concept of rahmah, mercy. People, وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. Duha and I, we were talking about this earlier, that anytime you have a community comprised of human beings, people will make mistakes. That's going to be a part of human communities. Mistakes will be made. But in this country, mass incarceration is not simply, a judicial answer to crime. It's not like, mass incarceration is the answer to the end of enslavement and then the reinstitution of enslavement in the name of mass incarceration. It's not just the natural consequence that, well, of course, when people make mistakes, you have to put them in jail. What else do you do? In fact, policing and crime and punishment in this country was not the same before the Emancipation Proclamation. If this was just an American thing, why didn't you have the same explosion of the prison population among white Americans? No, because that's not what matters. Our incarceration numbers as a nation are not about crime and punishment. They're about racism. Really, they're not about just, this is what happened when people, no. They're about racism. So for us as Muslims to live in a context in which this kind of gross social inequality is taking place, we should see it as our duty to have something to say about that and to have something to do about that. So everybody saw what happened with George Floyd. Right? This was, this made news all around the world. And the brother who owned Cup Foods, Mahmoud Abu Mayalla, Palestinian store owner, was actually, and I'm receiving reports from people on the ground. They said he actually had a pretty good rapport with the surrounding community. That he hired people from the neighborhood. There was a masjid in the basement of the store. He wasn't, as far as store owners in black communities, non-black store owners in black communities go, Mahmoud Abu Mayalla was said to be a good guy. And the person that actually called the police because George Floyd's behavior was erratic and he attempted to pay with this counterfeit bill was actually a young black man, right? The fact, however, is that all of us, from the store owner to the store clerk, have to recognize that even in pursuit of justice, picking up that telephone for something like that, I am not one of these people who thinks that the police should never be summoned. I think that's imbalanced. There are certain situations in which we do need a law enforcement officer. But for things like that, someone is erratic in their behavior, but not violent. Someone is attempting to pay with a counterfeit bill. We have to know that summoning the police in a situation like that could have either led to George Floyd's third felony offense, in which he would have been in jail forever, or worse. And I think we have to really think about what that means to be in community with folks or doing business with folks that are under this kind of pressure from the carceral state. What does that mean in terms of how I might respond to this kind of slight? Man, somebody paid me with a fake $20 bill. How do I deal with that? Because maybe in that situation, if I understand the dynamics of crime and punishment in this country, picking up the phone and calling the police, that might not be my first recourse. My first recourse might be to say, man, you lost $20. Please don't come back. Don't shop here again, man. This is fake money. Either you didn't know you gave me fake money or you did know you gave me fake money. I'm not going to call the police, but I don't want you in my store anymore, or something like that, because we understand the pressure under which this community lives, and we understand what putting that call into law enforcement might mean for George Floyd. But these are things that Muslims have to really think about as we enter those communities. These are things that I think about. One of the things that Doha and I were talking about, a mistake that we make often, and we don't even realize that we're doing this, is that we essentialize this conversation about race as black people are oppressed, and we're talking about the response of non-black people to that oppression. No, this challenge of aligning ourselves with the less fortunate, with the oppressed, this is a prophetic challenge to all human beings. Black human beings too. I was telling Doha that part of the dirty little secret is that middle-class black communities have also harbored many of these views toward poor black communities. Don't go down there. I don't talk to those people. Call the police on them. Get off my lawn. A lot of those, crack cocaine laws that led to the explosion in the prison population, these were laws supported by middle-class black communities. Clean up the neighborhood. I want a drug-free community. So all of us have to recognize there's a better response to oppression than that. There's a more prophetic response to oppression than that. And it might mean having some skin in the game. Could mean that you take a $20 loss on whatever purchases were made. Could mean, it's almost like, I guess, in my own way, what I'm trying to say is that the challenge that I'm issuing to immigrant Muslim communities to identify with poor and struggling communities is a challenge that I'm also issuing to myself. And I'm also issuing to other black communities. This is not a black versus non-black thing. This is people that are poor, people that are oppressed, people that experience regular trauma, people that are hunted in their communities, versus people that don't live under the immediate effect of those same pressures. And Allah said, هُوَ الَّذِي رَفَعَ بَعْدَكُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْدٍ دَرَجَاتٍ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِي مَا آتَاكُمْ. It is God who raised some of you above others in rank to test you in what He has given you. So all of us who don't find ourselves in such positions, whether we're black, white, whatever we are, if we're following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have to ask ourselves, what does my life mean to people who are in those situations? What is my level of commitment? What is my level of sacrifice? What is my level of dedication? It's not a question for non-black people only. It's a question also for black people like me and Doha as well. What does this mean for me? And I think all of us, starting with my own community, I think we can do a lot better. 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 I think we're overlooking a major component of the mission of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. You know, a major component of his mission I think we're overlooking. You know, the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam was generally followed, and you can study seerah if you want proof of this. Two kinds of people mostly followed the Prophet ﷺ. One, the marginalized, the under-resourced, the socially insignificant. They saw in his call to Islam a chance at redemption. And two, people that were a part of a prosperous merchant middle class that were frustrated with the oppressive culture of Quraysh, Mecca, and the Arabian Peninsula. These were people like Abu Bakr, people like Uthman, people like Abdurrahman ibn Auf. These were wealthy people, but they were wealthy people of conscience. And the gift of the Prophet ﷺ was being able to bring those two communities into relationship with each other. Not one of patronizing, but one of authentic brotherhood and sisterhood. And as an American Muslim community, we have an opportunity to do that, right? We actually have a community that has the demographic range to do that. But it's something we have to aspire to. It's something we have to want. Like we want our, look, I'm dreaming now, man. It's 8 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock where I'm from. It's getting late. I'm dreaming now, man. I think we should be looking, and this is, I'm going to challenge folks a little bit. Race is America's cardinal sin. It's America's original sin. When they limited citizenship to free white persons at the beginning of this country's founding, race became a problem in the United States of America. The Muslim community should be thinking about how we can proffer solutions to that. Not, to become just a part of the problem. Even in our activism and our progressive stances, just expressing just anger and vitriol at white Americans, and, suffering must be allowed to speak, and I understand that. There has to be space for that. But we should always be a solution-oriented people. Okay, we understand there's some historical offenses that we have to address, and there must be truth and reconciliation. But after that reconciliation, is it possible for us to be one community? Is it possible for us to enter a space of healing? And in the Muslim community, we have an opportunity to represent that very profoundly. Two companions I'll tell you about. Abu Dharr al-Ghifari and Bilal ibn Rabah. Two companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ from very different backgrounds. Bilal ibn Rabah is much more famous than Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. He was the treasurer of the Prophet ﷺ. He was also the mu'adhin of the Prophet ﷺ. His condition, his prior condition, was one of enslavement. And his emancipation was paid for by Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And his dedication to Islam is not questioned by anyone. He was present at Badr in every ghazwa of the Prophet ﷺ, every military campaign of the Prophet ﷺ. Bilal was there. Abu Dharr has a slightly different history. Abu Dharr was from the Ghifari tribe, and they were a very proud people. And they had some status, but not in the central lands of the central lands of the Arabian Peninsula, like Mecca. They had status like in the outlying areas, like around Taif, the Ghifari tribe. And once Abu Dhar and Bilal, and Abu Dhar was a brigand, which is a fancy word for a stick-up man. He was a highway robber, right? So he's, even in his person, he was, kind of an intimidating guy. And they were having an argument. They were having a disagreement about something. And Bilal, radiallahu anh, was disagreeing with Abu Dhar very, very strongly. And there was something about the way Bilal was disagreeing with him that upset him. He almost felt like it was unbecoming of someone like Bilal, given his prior condition of enslavement, to openly be opposing him in front of other people in such an assertive fashion. And Abu Dhar said to him, "Ya Ibn as-Sawda, you son of a black woman, how dare you talk to me like that?" And Bilal immediately stopped the conversation and went and told the Prophet ﷺ. And he said, "This man disrespected me. This man disrespected my mother." Now, what I find compelling about Bilal's response is that he didn't fight. He didn't become combative. But he also didn't explain away this slight, right? This racist attack, right? He didn't say, "Oh, well, he didn't really mean it," or no. He went right to the Prophet ﷺ and he explained, "This is unacceptable to me," right? He didn't say, "Well, I am a slave. What can I expect?" No. I am a Muslim. I'm a member of this community. I don't care who he is, where he comes from. He comes and talks about my mom, talks about me. The Prophet immediately summoned Abu Dhar. Another lesson. The Prophet ﷺ didn't say to Bilal, "Be patient." He just says, "Yeah, Bilal, use husn al-dhan. Your mother is a black woman." Maybe he didn't mean anything by it. Right? These are some of the responses you get in our community. Your mother is black. Maybe you didn't mean. Isn't your mother black? Okay then. You know what I mean? He said, no. The Prophet acknowledges, "I know that was a slur. I know he was attempting to insult you." Abu Dhar comes to the Prophet ﷺ trembling because he knows that he's about to be reprimanded. The Prophet says to him, "Ya Abu Dhar, O Abu Dhar, innaka rajulun fika shay'un min al-jahiliyyah." Abu Dhar, you're a man that still has some ignorance in you. So no matter how much of your Islam you esteem, your prayer, your fasting, your recitation of the Quran, for you to say something like this about Bilal and his mother, you've yet to come into Islam completely. Right? Allah Ta'ala says, فَدْخُلُوا فِي السِّلْمِ كَافَّةً, enter Islam completely. And when he said you still have some jahiliyyah in you, he was saying, you're not there yet. If you can say, if something like that is in your heart, let alone on your tongue, you're not there yet. You're not there yet. Abu Dhar was so heartbroken that the Prophet ﷺ said that you're still a man of jahiliyyah, a little bit. He didn't completely invalidate Abu Dhar, like you're not Muslim or something like that, but you still have some work to do on yourself. He goes back to Bilal and he begs his forgiveness. He says, "Please forgive me for what I said." Right? When you tell this story, the real hero of the story is Abu Dhar. He's able to recognize his mistake and he seeks to atone for his mistake. I was wrong for what I said. And then look at Bilal's response. He didn't hold a grudge and say, "I'll never forgive you," and I'll never pray with you, and you can't ever give me salam. He forgave him immediately. "I forgive you." But Abu Dhar looked at him and said, "No, I can tell. You still have something. You're holding something." And Bilal assured him, "No, I'm not holding it. I said I forgive you. It's over." Abu Dhar said, no, no, no. I'm going to get down on the ground. Now, mind you, I get a little emotional telling the story because everything in Abu Dhar's life prior to that moment suggested to him that he was of a higher social rank than Bilal. So for him now to grovel before this man, to put his face in dirt, this is an indication of the piety of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad. He said, no, I'm going to get down on the ground. I'm going to place my face in the dirt. And I'm not going to get up until you take your foot and place it on my head. And Bilal assured him, you don't have to do this. You don't have, this is not, I don't require this of you. And Abu Dhar swore, أقسم بالله لا أرفع من هذا المكان حتى تخط على رأسي. I'm not getting up from here until you step on my head. I'll die right here if you don't. Bilal just lightly took his foot and just grazed the top of Abu Dhar's head. Why am I telling this story? It's because even among the best generation of Muslims, people that we look up to, people after whom we name our children, they had issues with ethnic and racial and cultural differences. They had issues with that. It's never easy. But they wanted piety. They wanted the completion of their iman. And this is why they could work towards something better. So here we are as a community, multi-ethnic, diverse, different social economic classes. We live in different parts of the city. If we want the completion of our iman that comes through fellowshipping with our brothers and our sisters across a broad spectrum with respect, then we will strive for something better. Right? And I feel like we have to represent that. Sometimes, I get angry at myself. I feel like, man, the youth would resonate, or what I say would resonate with the youth more if I was angrier. I wish I was more angry. I just, of course, you have to get on the bullhorn. You got to drop at least 1 or 2 F-bombs just to let them know you're authentic. You know what I'm saying? And, I had a more scathing, unforgiving, unhopeful position vis-a-vis white America. People might say, no, you feel our pain. What I'm trying to do is say, I feel your pain. I have experienced indignities at the hands of non-black people, white people and Muslims. But something in me still holds out hope that we can be together in brotherhood and sisterhood and love. And I'm still trying to live my life in pursuit of that. I don't know why. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. No, honestly, maybe I'm crazy. And I'm just not that angry. Just not that angry. I mean, it's like we got work to do. I have work to do. You have work to do. But we have the book of Allah. We have the example of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The very fact that we're here, my sister, Texas, St. Louis, Mississippi, Georgia, Chicago, my brother Sam Chesno, my brother Moses, my sister Duha, my brother right there, the fact that we're just in this room together and we can share space, I think this is a good beginning, man. We just have to build on this. We have to deepen this, man. I really esteem the efforts of MAPS. I think, we have to get beyond the superficial, and we have to deepen those bonds. We have to deepen those connections. But the very fact that Brother Haider and folks that I know at MAPS are always making efforts, overtures, this is a good start. We just have to listen to sisters like Adasha and Doha, and how can we make this, how can we deepen what we have? But what we have is a good start, man. So, I really believe that we can exemplify as a community a move in the direction of just better ways to live together and be together in community, man, across racial and ethnic difference. And, every time I say this, I'm like, man, this just sounds so soft. It just sounds so milquetoast. It sounds so soft. And then I go back to the legacy of Dr. King and the legacy of Malcolm after he returned from Hajj. And I say, no, there's nothing weak about that ambition. There's nothing weak about that ambition. There's nothing assimilationist about that ambition. There's nothing that requires strength. Like to actually say to my Muslim community, and I'm bridging the fourth wall here, right? But to actually say to my Muslim community, and I'm a proud black man, I want to be loved by you. I actually want to actually admit that to myself. Man, there's a lot. It takes a lot for me to say, no, I want to be loved by my brothers, man. I want to. Because every fiber in my body is saying, man, to hell with them. You don't love me, I love myself. No, actually, if I'm being honest with myself, I want to be loved by my brothers and sisters from different places. I want to find a healthier basis to build my relationships with white Americans upon. I want that. And so I'm prepared to work for it. Yeah, that's soft, man. That's soft. That's soft, man. But it's true, though. Yes, sister. Absolutely, man. And I think, getting to a place that we can convince brothers and sisters, especially, Black American brothers and sisters, that we don't identify with the pain of oppression or injustice or just even interpersonal slights in the Muslim community. We don't identify with that any less. We're just able to transcend that. We're just able to get past that. Like, I've experienced those things. I mean, I could tell you things that I've experienced from Muslims that would make your hair stand on end. And yet, I still feel like our community has a chance, man. The embarrassment or the humiliation or the anger from those experiences has not consumed me so that, what I experienced was definitely ignorance. It was definitely painful. But I'm sure it doesn't represent the highest potential of all South Asian Muslims. Right? And let's get to a place where we can explore some of that potential. I remember once I was in a madrasa, and I was living at a madrasa, and I was going to school there, memorizing the Quran, studying Arabic, studying fiqh. And anybody who knows me, they know I'm a very, what you call, fastidious person. I'm very neat. You come into my home, I'm very neat. I'm neat to the point that it's like irritating. Somebody comes in my house and sits in a chair. When they get up, I adjust the pillow. You know, my wife was like, Ubayd, you cannot do that, man. That's just bad hospitality, dude. You cannot do that, man. Like, you just wait till the company leaves before you do that. Like, I will, like, if you come to my house, kick your shoes off, I will stack your shoes at my door. Like, she's like, when you do that, babe, you make people uncomfortable. I'm just very neat, you know, in that way. So one of my teachers came into a room that I was sharing with some other students, and the room was very messy. But clearly it wasn't because of me, because I don't like mess, but it was their things. They were all South Asian. They were all Indian. I was the only African American, you know, in the room. He looked at the room and said, clean this place up. It's starting to look dirty like the South Side. And looked right at me. I mean, I will never forget how his words pierced me, like, dirty like the South Side. I live on the South Side of Chicago, and I'm from the South Side of Chicago. Clean this place up. It's starting to look dirty like the South Side. I was like, what? And he just walked out. And I was asking the students, like, what was that? And they were like, SubhanAllah, this is our mess. And he still associated this unkempt room with you. And this is a scholar of Islam, one of my teachers. That hurt. That hurt. That really hurt. You know what I mean? Like, I'm at a place now as a man that I can actually sit in the vulnerability of saying, man, that really hurt me, man. When he said, I said, damn, man, why would he say something like that? This is someone that, like, prior to that, I would say, man, that's my teacher. This is my sheikh. I love this man. That hurt me. And it took a while for me to address him and say, you know, one day you said this to me. This really hurt me, man. He was like, you know what? That was a horrible thing that I said. I don't even know where it came from. And yes, Allah has given me the opportunity to study the tradition, but I'm still working on myself too. And he apologized to me. This is the reality of trying to be in community with people, man. You know, so I'm still hopeful, man. I'm still hopeful. You know, I'm still hopeful, you know. I don't know.
We'll take one last comment before we wrap up. It's on.
So my question for you was, you know, because me and my parents, we talk about this all the time. So if Black communities had Islam, if we had Islam across America, like we used to, how would you think we would be now? I just want to hear your response.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I don't know, man. There's an answer to that question, and then there's an answer to that question. You know what I'm saying? You know, I don't want to say anything that casts doubt on the transformative power of Islam. You know, Islam has worked wonders, in my life, the lives of many of my family members. I've seen people transformed by Islam in ways that if I began to tell you stories, You would think I was making this up. You would think I was making this up. But I'm really not making this up. I'll tell you one quick story. I knew a guy. In fact, I know this brother, but he might come to Seattle, so I'm not going to say his name. And he lived in a public housing development in Chicago that has since been torn down. It was known as Cabrini Green. I mean, a horrific public housing development. And once he called me over to visit with him, and we were walking through the building, and people were seeing him, and they were repenting to God. I would walk through the project building with him, people would see him and say, good God Almighty. And I wanted to know, damn, who are you, man? You know, the people would just see him and say, oh, God is good. Oh, God is good. Just like people, like this was like a response that people had to him. And so one day I was there with him, and he had went off somewhere, and somebody else was like, man, that guy, oh my God, man, y'all religion is real because it changed him. And so I said, well, it changed him from what? I can't imagine him being any different than he is now. They said, man, these two buildings were having like a war over gang territory, over drug territory. And they said that he promised that he was going to shoot somebody from the other building every day for the next month, and he did it. He shot somebody every night for 30 days. He did it. He was like that. And now we see him, it's almost like he's a different person. We couldn't imagine him hurting anybody. He comes around, visits people, he's helpful, he brings food to people that are struggling, and we know what he used to be. If that's what Islam does to people, Islam is true. People were embracing Islam off just seeing him. If Islam can make him into that, from what we know he used to be, somebody to terrorize this entire project, Islam must be true. So I don't want to say anything that detracts from that transformative power that exists in Islam, right? And we've seen that amongst our people. At the same time, when I say there's an answer and there's an answer, if Islam is embraced, but we don't really have a focus on what will benefit, how can I say this? Okay. I want to say this delicately, but I want to say it accurately. Okay, here you go. Here you go. Here you go. If we don't embrace that Islamic teaching in a way that addresses the most serious needs within our community, Islam can really just become a source of kind of a exotic kind of escape from the issues confronting our community, so that nothing is really changing, but we're dressed in Middle Eastern robes and perfuming ourselves with Indian scents, but we're not really getting to what is needed by our community, right? And our community has real needs that Islam can't address, but the approach to Islam must be the right approach to Islam. Like, families need to be repaired. I know Sheikh Hamza Yusuf got crucified for saying that. Right? But no, we need to repair a sense of male responsibility. This is a real thing. I know I'm not supposed to say this in front of non-black people. I'm sorry. It's the truth. A sense of male responsibility has to be repaired. I know Muslim men been married 15 times, 22 children. You ask them, hey man, what? Don't you think you should be a little more serious about, responsibility? The Sahaba used to get married and divorced all the time, wallahi. So the wrong Islamic teaching can be embraced. You understand what I'm saying? And it won't address what we need to address, right? Financial literacy needs to be taught in communities, right? These are things that if we focus on those things, Islam can be a great source of restoration for our people. But if we choose not to focus on those things, the way we practice Islam might not just naturally address, those things. So in terms of where we would be if our community practiced Islam the way it used to, it all depends on how we're practicing Islam. That's what I think. It's what kind of Islam are we practicing, right? If it's like Nation of Islam, but with the proper aqidah, okay, now we're cooking. Now we got something. Some of the other stuff that we've seen, we got some work to do. 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 We got some work. And Allah knows best.
Before we finally close out, I just wanted you to talk a little bit more about your upcoming island program and how folks can get involved with that.
Alhamdulillah. So every year, my day job is I'm the resident scholar of the American Learning Institute for Muslims. And we do a lot of programming throughout the year, but our flagship program is a 3-week study intensive that we're doing this year in July. We're doing it in Canton, Michigan. We've done it in Chicago for the last few years, but this year we're going to do it in Canton, Michigan. It is an absolutely transformative program. It's one of the first places that I felt comfortable, studying Islam, but asking, critical questions, engaging the tradition, not just from the standpoint of deference, but critical analysis. And I found that asking critical questions didn't lower or decrease my confidence in the tradition. It actually increased my confidence in the tradition. So I would recommend that everybody attend the Alim program, but those of you who can't, try to sponsor a student. It's 3 weeks. Most working people are like, look, man, we love Islam, but I'm not using all my vacation days to study Islam. I'm just telling you the truth. Send a college student. Really, we welcome that. Send a college student. It's Islamic literacy, but it's empowering. That's the difference. And alhamdulillah, those who teach the tradition in a preservative mode, like we're teaching the tradition with the purpose of preserving it, you recognize its grandeur and you preserve it, that's cool too. But teaching the tradition in a way that empowers people, gives them license to ask questions, and teaches with the Socratic method, this is what we do very well. And, Dr. Sherman Jackson will be there, Dr. Munir Fareed will be there, Ustadh Zainab Ansari will be there, Dr. Hadi Mubarak will be there. Last year we had Omar Suleiman. Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah has taught at our program. Sheikh Majid, Imam Majid, mashallah, the de facto president of all the Sunnis in America. Imam Majid has taught at our program. Dr. Jonathan Brown has taught at our program. We really feel that in terms of Muslims thinking critically about the tradition and studying in a faith-affirming environment, we think we do a uniquely good job. So you can look for information about that program on alimprogram.org. Preempted your question, mashallah. ALIM program.org. You can register there. Jazakumullahu khair. This thing's hurting my ear. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحان ربي رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you everybody for coming tonight. joined in via our Facebook Live. Guys,
وعليكم أجمعين. الحمد لله.